My son had already scheduled the survey crew when I drove back to my late wife's apple orchard for the first time in 19 years. I expected dead trees, a collapsed packing shed, and weeds tall enough to hide a tractor. Instead, I found the gate freshly painted, smoke rising from the cider house, and two children carrying baskets of red apples toward a barn glowing with warm yellow light. Then I saw my wife's blue scarf tied around the oldest tree. A gray-haired woman stepped onto the porch, stared at me as though she had been waiting for years, and said, "Mr. Reed, Evelyn told us you would come when your son tried to take this place away. My name is Samuel Reed." I was 72 years old when that happened, 9 months after I buried my wife of 46 years. Evelyn died on a Wednesday morning while watering the ferns in our sunroom. One moment she was complaining that I had brewed the coffee too weak. The next, the watering can struck the tile floor, and she followed it. The doctors called it a massive stroke. They said she probably never understood what was happening. I have spent many nights praying that was true. After the funeral, our house outside Charlotte became so quiet that I began leaving the television on in rooms I wasn't using. I slept on my side of the bed and kept Evelyn's pillow untouched. Her gardening shoes remained beneath the bench by the back door, still dusted with the pale mountain soil she had brought home from the orchard the previous fall. Our children, Derek and Melissa, visited often during the first month. At least, I thought they were visiting me. Derek arrived with folders, spreadsheets, and the name of an estate appraiser. Melissa brought freezer meals, medication organizers, and brochures for retirement communities. They spoke gently at first. "Dad, we're just trying to make things easier. Dad, you shouldn't have to manage all this alone. Dad, there's no shame in simplifying." Simplifying became their favorite word. The house was too large. My truck was too old. The stairs were too steep. The orchard was too far away. My bank accounts were too complicated. My grief made me too distracted. Every concern ended in the same place. I needed to surrender something. The orchard was at the top of Derek's list. Evelyn had inherited 62 acres outside Hendersonville from her father. When we were young, we spent weekends there repairing fences, pruning trees, and sleeping in a drafty farmhouse where raccoons fought inside the chimney. We moved to Charlotte when I became a regional supervisor for the Postal Service. I kept promising we would return when work slowed down. Work never slowed down. The children came. Bills grew. My promotions demanded longer hours. The orchard became Evelyn's responsibility, then her refuge. She drove there every October for harvest, and several times during the spring and summer. She always asked me to join her. I always had a reason not to go. There was inventory at the distribution center. There was a retirement dinner. There was a Panthers game with my brother. There was a leaking water heater, a dental appointment, or simply the comfort of my own recliner. Eventually, she stopped asking. I told myself she enjoyed the independence. That is the danger of a long marriage, my friends. Sometimes you stop asking what the other person needs because you have already decided you know the answer. 3 weeks after Evelyn's funeral, Derek placed an aerial photograph of the orchard on my kitchen table. He worked in commercial development and wore expensive shoes that never seemed to touch mud. "A resort company wants the land," he said. "Luxury cabins, a spa, mountain views. They're offering $840,000. I stared at the photograph. The orchard looked small from above, just green rows folded between wooded ridges. "Your mother never mentioned selling." Mom wasn't thinking clearly about money near the end. That sentence hardened something inside me. "Your mother balanced our accounts to the penny until the day she died." Derek exhaled as if I were a difficult customer. "I'm not criticizing her. I'm saying she was sentimental. The orchard costs money, Dad. Taxes, insurance, equipment, labor. It hasn't produced a meaningful profit in years." "Then how did she pay the expenses?" "She probably covered them from her personal account. Melissa and I are still sorting through everything." I looked toward Melissa. She sat across from me with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "Is that true?" I asked. She hesitated. "I don't know all the details, Dad, but Derek is right about one thing. $800,000 could secure your future." My future was sitting at this table until 9 months ago. Melissa lowered her eyes. Derek did not. "You need to stop making every decision based on grief. And you need to stop making every decision based on a sales price." That ended the conversation for the day, but not the pressure. Derek called every morning. Melissa checked on me every evening. He talked about liability. She talked about safety. He warned that the buyer might withdraw. She reminded me that I had forgotten to lock the back door twice. Then Derek made a mistake. He said, "The company needs vacant possession before winter." I looked up from the newspaper. Vacant? He paused for half a second. It's standard language. Why would they specify vacant possession if no one lives there? No one lives there. You just said they did. I said it's contract language, Dad. He spoke quickly after that, covering the crack with explanations, but I had already heard it. That night, I went into Evelyn's sewing room and opened the old cedar cabinet where she kept farm receipts. Most of the drawers had been emptied. Derek had taken the financial files, supposedly to help settle the estate. But behind a stack of quilting patterns, I found a photograph. Evelyn stood beside the orchard's cider press, laughing with a woman I had never seen. Around them were 5 children and 3 adults holding baskets of apples. A handwritten sign behind them read, "Harvest House Cooperative 7th Annual Fall Supper." The photograph was dated 2 years earlier. On the back, Evelyn had written, "The family we built by showing up. I barely slept." The next morning, I called Derek. "I'm driving to the orchard." His silence told me more than any answer could have. "Dad, that's unnecessary." "Apparently, it isn't. The roads are narrow." "Your blood pressure." "My blood pressure rises every time you speak to me like I'm helpless." "I'm not doing that. You arranged a sale for land you don't own, and you neglected to mention people may be living there. There are temporary workers. That's all." "How temporary?" "Dad, please let me handle this professionally. I am not one of your developments." He offered to drive me. I refused. He offered to hire a car. I refused that too. Before hanging up, he said, "Don't sign anything. Don't promise anyone anything. There are people who take advantage of grieving seniors." Perhaps he believed that warning would frighten me. Instead, it convinced me to leave that afternoon. The drive from Charlotte to Hendersonville took a little over 2 hours. I had expected memories to arrive slowly, but they came at me from every turn. The gas station where Evelyn once locked the keys inside our truck. The roadside stand where she bought peaches and insisted they were better than apples, which her father considered treason. The church with the white steeple where we attended a Christmas Eve service during an ice storm. As the highway narrowed, I began to understand how completely I had abandoned that part of her life. She had driven those roads alone for 19 years while I stayed home, congratulating myself for giving her freedom. The orchard entrance appeared just before sunset. The wooden gate had once been dark green. Now it was painted a soft gray, with a carved apple mounted in the center. Beneath it, someone had added a smaller sign, "Harvest House, Work, Shelter, and a Way Forward." I parked beside the road and listened. A tractor engine rumbled somewhere beyond the trees. Music drifted from the packing barn. I heard children laughing. Nothing about the place sounded abandoned. The orchard rows were clean and heavily fruited. Irrigation hoses ran neatly beneath the trees. Fresh gravel covered the lane. The old farmhouse had a new roof, and smoke curled from its chimney. Then I noticed Evelyn's blue scarf tied around the trunk of the largest apple tree. She had worn that scarf on cool mornings for nearly 20 years. I touched the fabric. It had faded from navy to the color of a summer sky. "Mr. Reed?" I turned. The woman on the farmhouse porch appeared to be in her late 60s. She had silver hair braided down her back and wore work boots beneath a long brown skirt. 2 teenage boys stood behind her, each holding a basket of apples. "I'm Samuel Reed," I said. She walked toward me slowly. "I'm Ruth Alvarez." I recognized her from the photograph. Her eyes moved to my wedding ring. "We heard about Evelyn," she said. "I'm so sorry." "You knew my wife?" Ruth gave a small, trembling smile. "She saved my life." Before I could respond, a little girl ran from the barn and wrapped both arms around Ruth's waist. Ruth rested one hand on the child's head. "This is my granddaughter, June." The girl looked up at me. "Are you Miss Evelyn's husband?" "Yes. She said you could fix anything with a paper clip." I laughed before I could stop myself. Evelyn had exaggerated, but hearing the girl repeat one of her stories felt like a window opening in a sealed room. Ruth invited me into the farmhouse. The kitchen I remembered as dim and cold had become the heart of a busy home. 2 large tables filled the room. Jars of apple butter cooled on the counter. Children's homework covered one end of a table, while three women labeled cider bottles at the other. There were photographs everywhere. Evelyn teaching a boy to drive a tractor. Evelyn helping Ruth hang curtains. Evelyn surrounded by families at a Thanksgiving dinner. Evelyn holding a newborn baby. In every picture, she looked alive in a way I had not seen at home for years. Not younger exactly, the freer. "How long has this been here?" I asked. 11 years, Ruth said. I sank into a chair. 11? She poured coffee into a thick ceramic cup and sat across from me. The wildfire in 2016 destroyed the trailer park where my daughter and I lived, near Lake Lure. My husband had died the year before. We lost the trailer, my sewing machines, everything. We stayed in a church gym for almost 6 weeks. Ruth looked around the kitchen. Evelyn was delivering apples to the church. She asked why we were still there. I told her we had nowhere affordable to go. 2 days later, she brought us here. I tried to picture my wife making that decision without mentioning it to me. At first, it was only Ruth and her daughter, said a man standing near the stove. He introduced himself as Leon Parker, a former mechanic in his 50s. Then, Mrs. Reed met my family. Leon had lost his house after medical bills and a factory closure. Another woman had escaped an abusive marriage with 2 young children. A widowed teacher had nearly become homeless after a landlord sold her apartment building. Evelyn offered each family temporary housing in exchange for work at the orchard, but temporary became something larger. The adults repaired the farmhouse and converted an unused equipment shed into 2 small apartments. They restored the cider press, reopened the roadside stand, and began selling apple butter, pies, and bottled cider. "Your wife didn't give us a free life," Ruth said. "She gave us a fair chance to build one." Derek said the orchard loses money. The room became very quiet. Ruth folded her hands. "The orchard pays its own expenses. Not a fortune, but enough. Everyone contributes. We have records for every dollar. Then why would he say otherwise?" Ruth studied me for a long moment. "Because your son has already promised this land to someone else." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He came here 3 months after Evelyn died. He brought a surveyor and a man from Blue Ridge Retreats, the resort company. He told us the orchard would be sold and that we had 60 days to leave. When I said Evelyn had made arrangements, he told me those arrangements would not survive probate." "Did he show you an eviction order?" "No, only a letter on his company's stationery." "Why didn't you contact me?" "We tried." Ruth rose, opened a desk drawer, and brought me a bundle of returned envelopes. Each one was addressed to my house. Across the front, someone had written, "Moved, returned to sender." I haven't moved. I know that now. Only 3 people had access to my mail during the first months after Evelyn died: Melissa, Derek, and me. Ruth's voice lowered. "Mr. Reed, your son said you were confused after your wife's death. He said all communication had to go through him." The anger came slowly, which made it worse. It began in my chest and spread into my hands. "Was my daughter here?" "Once," Ruth said. "She came with Derek. She seemed surprised to see children. She kept asking him questions outside. They argued before they left." That sounded like Melissa. Not innocent, perhaps, but not fully informed. Ruth walked to a cabinet and removed a metal cash box. "Evelyn told me that if anyone attempted to sell the orchard, I should give you this." Inside were ledgers, bank statements, insurance records, and signed cooperative agreements. The numbers were clear. Harvest House had paid the property taxes, insurance, repairs, and operating expenses for 7 consecutive years. There was also a flash drive and a sealed envelope bearing my name. My fingers shook when I picked it up. The envelope contained only 1 page. "Sam, before you decide anything about the orchard, watch the recording. Please listen longer than you listened when I was alive." I closed my eyes. Ruth touched my shoulder. "You can use Evelyn's room." The bedroom upstairs looked almost exactly as it had when we were young, except the cracked wallpaper had been replaced and the windows no longer rattled. Evelyn's old quilt covered the bed. Her reading glasses rested beside a stack of gardening books. On the dresser sat a photograph of the 2 of us, taken on our 25th anniversary. She had kept me there, even when I had chosen not to be present. I inserted the flash drive into an old laptop. Evelyn appeared on the screen wearing a green cardigan. The recording date was 6 months before her death. For several seconds, She simply looked into the camera. Then she smiled. "Hello, Sam." I covered my mouth. Her voice filled the room, ordinary and impossible. "If you're watching this, something has forced you back to the orchard. I'm sorry it took a crisis to bring you here, but I suppose that has always been our way." She explained Harvest House from the beginning. Ruth and her daughter, the other families, the repaired buildings, the cooperative income. Then her expression changed. "I should have told you. I wanted to tell you. For years I imagined bringing you here and watching you teach the children how to fish or repair a broken hinge with one of your ridiculous pocket tools." She looked down at her hands. "But every time I invited you, you had somewhere else to be. After a while, I became afraid that if you came, you would see this place only as another obligation." The truth hurt because it was not cruel. Cruelty gives you someone to blame. Truth leaves you with yourself. "I loved our life," she continued. "But somewhere between your work and my routines, we became excellent partners in managing a household and poor witnesses to each other's hearts." I paused the video. For years, I had described our marriage as peaceful. Now I wondered how much of that peace had been silence. When I resumed the recording, Evelyn told me that Harvest House had become the place where she felt useful again after our children no longer needed her and after I retired into routines that did not include her. "I did not come here because I loved you less," she said. "I came because there were parts of me that still wanted to matter." She explained the legal plan. A Hendersonville attorney named Helen Brooks held documents establishing a proposed community land trust. Evelyn had funded a maintenance reserve with money inherited from her aunt. The orchard business covered normal operating expenses. The reserve could pay property taxes and major repairs for at least 12 years. Nothing had been left to chance. But the trust could not become permanent without my signature because my name remained on the original deed. Then Evelyn spoke about Derek. "Your son discovered the cooperative 2 years ago while helping me renew the insurance policy. He saw the acreage only as a development opportunity. He introduced me to Blue Ridge Retreats and said the sale could become his largest commission." I leaned closer to the screen. I refused. Derek became angry. He said I was giving away his inheritance. I reminded him that an inheritance is not something a living person owes a healthy adult child. A bitter laugh escaped me. That sounded exactly like Evelyn. "Melissa knew there were families here," she continued, "but I did not tell her everything. She worried about legal liability and believed Derek when he said the orchard was failing. She is not blameless, Sam, but she is not her brother." Then Evelyn looked directly at the camera. "If Derek pressures you to sell, ask him about the buyer's agreement. He signed a private consulting contract promising to deliver this land vacant. His fee is $120,000. I stopped breathing. Derek was not protecting my future. He was selling it for a commission. The video continued. "Do not decide out of anger. Anger is only useful long enough to help you stand up. After that, it begins choosing for you." Her eyes filled with tears. "3 options are prepared. You may sell the orchard and provide each resident with relocation funds. You may retain ownership and grant the cooperative a long-term lease. Or you may complete the land trust, protect Harvest House permanently, and reserve the small north cottage for yourself if you ever want to live nearby." She smiled again. "I know you may never choose that cottage. You like your chair, your newspaper, and coffee weak enough to see through. But I wanted you to have a door here." Then she said the words that broke me. "Sam, I did not build a secret life to escape you. I built a place large enough that, someday, you might find your way back into the world." The screen went dark. I sat alone in that room until evening. Outside, the orchard workers finished loading baskets. A bell rang for supper. Children called to one another across the yard. For 9 months, I had believed Evelyn left me with nothing but an empty house and memories. Instead, she had left me a door. A knock sounded. Melissa stood in the doorway. Her face was pale. "Dad." I rose so quickly the chair scraped the floor. "How did you know I was here?" "Derek called me. He said you were being manipulated." She saw the laptop, the cash box, and the documents spread across the bed. "You watched Mom's recording?" "Yes." Melissa began to cry. "I didn't know about his commission. But you knew people lived here." "I knew there were workers. Derek told me the arrangement was informal and dangerous. He said Mom had exposed herself to lawsuits." "You came here. Once. I saw the families, and I asked him why he hadn't told me there were children. He said they were using Mom's generosity. Did you help him block their letters? Her eyes widened. No. I showed her the returned envelopes. Melissa stared at them. Derek collected your mail for weeks after the funeral. So did you. I brought it inside. I never marked anything returned. For the first time that day, I believed someone immediately. Melissa sat on the edge of the bed. I should have come to you. I should have asked Mom more questions while she was alive. But Derek made everything sound urgent. The taxes, your forgetfulness, the assisted living brochures. You brought those brochures. I was scared. Of what? Losing you two. Her answer softened me, but it did not erase what she had done. I forgot 2 appointments after your mother died, I said. I left the stove on once. That did not give either of you permission to treat me like I had stopped being a man. I know. No, you know now. She nodded, tears running freely. You're right. A vehicle roared up the gravel lane. Derek's black SUV stopped beside the farmhouse. He climbed out with a leather folder under one arm and anger written across his face. He entered without knocking. Dad, we need to leave. No. These people have filled your head with half-truths. Did Blue Ridge Retreats promise you $120,000? He stopped. Melissa turned toward him. What? Derek's eyes moved between us. It was a consulting agreement. Standard business. You were going to collect a fee for selling your mother's orchard. I was going to create value from an underperforming asset. Ruth and several residents had gathered near the kitchen doorway. Derek looked at them as if their presence offended him. This is exactly why family decisions should remain private. Ruth answered calmly. Our homes stopped being private when you promised them to a resort. He ignored her and placed the folder on the table. Dad, the buyer's offer expires Friday. If we lose it, you may never see this price again. The orchard pays its expenses. Barely. The maintenance reserve holds enough money for 12 years. His expression changed. He had not known about the reserve. Melissa stepped closer. You told me Mom had drained her retirement account. She moved money into an irresponsible project. It was her money, I said. It was family money. No, son. That is the lie you have been telling yourself. You believed everything your mother and I earned already belonged to you. Derek's face reddened. I'm trying to protect what she built. You were trying to bulldoze what she built. He looked toward Melissa. You're taking his side now? I'm taking Mom's side. You don't understand the legal exposure. Helen Brooks does, I said. I'm meeting her in the morning. Derek stared at me. You called the attorney? I'm 72, not 12. Dad, grief has affected your judgment. There it was again. The weapon they used whenever my decision differed from theirs. I walked to the front door and opened it. You should leave. His mouth fell open. You're choosing strangers over your own son. No. I am choosing my own decision over yours. He looked around the kitchen, perhaps expecting someone to support him. No one did. Melissa remained beside me. Derek picked up his folder. At the doorway, he turned. If you sign that land away, don't expect me to repair this relationship afterward. I looked at the son I had carried on my shoulders, coached through Little League, and helped through business school. I have been waiting 9 months for you to care more about repairing our relationship than arranging my property. He left without another word. That night, I ate supper at the long kitchen table. June sat beside me and asked whether Evelyn really burned every pancake she made. She didn't burn all of them, I said. Only the ones she served to me. The room filled with laughter. Later, Ruth gave me the north cottage key. The cottage stood at the edge of the orchard near a small pond. It had 1 bedroom, a stone fireplace, and a porch facing the mountains. Evelyn had placed one of my old fishing rods above the mantel. I slept there that night. For the first time since her death, I dreamed about Evelyn without dreaming about the hospital. In the morning, Melissa drove me to Helen Brooks's office. Helen was a small woman in her 70s with steel-gray hair and the calm manner of someone who had watched families destroy themselves over property before breakfast. She reviewed every option. Selling would be legal but would end Harvest House. The families would receive relocation money from Evelyn's reserve. A long-term lease would protect them temporarily but leave the orchard vulnerable after my death. The Community Land Trust would preserve the land for agricultural and residential use. Harvest House Cooperative would manage the orchard. The reserve would remain restricted to taxes, insurance, and major repairs. I would retain a lifetime right to use the north cottage. This is not an impulsive gift, Helen said. Your wife spent 4 years building the structure. What happens to Derek's contract? He had no authority to promise the land. The buyer may pursue him for misrepresentation, but they cannot compel you to sell. Melissa sat silently beside me. Can Derek challenge the trust? He can try. He is unlikely to succeed. Evelyn documented the orchard's finances, obtained independent capacity evaluations, and recorded her intentions. She anticipated resistance. Of course she had. Evelyn carried umbrellas on cloudless days. Helen placed the final documents before me. I thought about the big house in Charlotte, where every room echoed. I thought about the orchard kitchen, where people argued over the last biscuit. I thought about all the years I had mistaken familiarity for closeness. Then I signed. Helen notarized the documents and handed me a copy. When I returned to Harvest House, everyone had gathered beneath the oldest apple tree. Ruth stood beside the blue scarf. I told them the orchard had been placed in the land trust. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ruth covered her face and cried. Leon shook my hand with both of his. June wrapped her arms around my waist. Melissa stood apart from the crowd until Ruth walked over and embraced her too. That evening we held supper outside. Someone played a guitar. Children chased fireflies between the trees. The mountains turned purple as the sun disappeared. I sat beneath Evelyn's apple tree and listened to the life she had protected. I finally understood that she had not left me behind. She had been waiting for me to arrive. I sold the Charlotte house the following spring. Not because my children pressured me. Not because I could no longer manage it. I sold it because I no longer wanted to live in a museum of the life Evelyn and I had stopped sharing. I moved into the north cottage with my own furniture, my weak coffee, and the recliner everyone claimed was too ugly to survive another move. Melissa began visiting twice a month. She helped Ruth organize the cooperative's medical records and eventually apologized to every resident for believing Derek without listening to them. Forgiveness did not happen in a single conversation. It happened through repeated actions. Derek stayed away for nearly a year. Then, one October morning, I saw him standing outside the gate. He had no leather folder and no sales documents. His shoes were still too expensive for mud. He looked older than I remembered. The company fired me, he said. Blue Ridge found out I never had authority to guarantee the sale. I'm sorry. He looked surprised that I meant it. I was angry at Mom, he said. I thought she valued these people more than us. Your mother valued the people who showed up. He stared into the orchard. Can I come in? I considered the question. Then I opened the gate. Coming in was not the same as being forgiven. It was only the first honest step he had taken. Sometimes, my friends, that is all a family can offer at the beginning. The following year, Harvest House produced its largest crop in a decade. We added a scholarship fund, using profits from the cider business. June won the county science fair with a project about soil restoration. Ruth taught me to make apple butter without scorching the bottom of the pot. On the anniversary of Evelyn's death, we tied fresh blue ribbons around the oldest tree. I stood there with Melissa on one side and Derek several feet away on the other. Ruth's family filled the rows behind us. I did not feel that one family had replaced another. I felt that my understanding of family had finally become large enough. Evelyn had taught me one last thing. A home is not measured by whose name appears on a deed. It is measured by who keeps the lights on when someone is afraid, who cooks when another person is grieving, who fixes the roof before the rain, and who stays after there is nothing left to inherit. I had spent years believing the orchard was a burden Evelyn refused to release. It turned out to be the most generous thing she ever built. And at 72, when my own children believed my useful years were behind me, I found a place where every morning someone knocked on my door because I was needed, not for my land, not for my money, just for me. Sometimes the people who truly care for us are the ones who keep showing up, not the ones who simply share our name. Samuel found peace when he stopped treating love like an inheritance and started recognizing it in daily acts of work, honesty, and kindness. We can honor those we love by listening sooner, choosing with courage, and leaving room for others to become family. A small note for you, this story was created and fictionalized by AI for entertainment, while also sharing a positive lesson about love, dignity, and chosen family.